was 1968 when the former Ponce de Leon Hotel opened its doors as Flagler College. And just a few years later, in 1975, the Flagler College Baseball Saints played their first intercollegiate baseball game, setting in motion a baseball program that is today one of the finest small baseball programs in the United States. Hi, I'm Freddie Ford, your host for this movie, and I was lucky enough to be one of those Flagler College baseball players from the 1970s. And I put together this little production based on my memories and my recollections of that time. So this movie you're about to see, well, this is our story.
On the day I was born, the nurses all gathered round, and they gazed in wide wonder at the joy they had found. The head nurse spoke up, said, "Leave this one alone." She could tell right away that I was bad to the bone, bad to the bone, bad to the bone, bad, bad, bad to the bone. I broke 1,000 hearts before I met you. I'll break 1,000 more, baby, before I am through. I wanna be yours, pretty baby, yours and yours alone. I'm here to tell you, honey, that I'm bad to the bone, bad to the bone, bad, bad, bad to the bone. Woman beg, and I make a good woman steal. I make an old woman blush, and I make a young girl squeal. I wanna be yours, pretty baby, yours and yours alone. I'm here to tell you, honey, that I'm bad to the bone, bad, bad, bad to the bone. Every woman I meet, they all stay satisfied. I want to tell you, pretty baby, what I see I make my own. And I'm here to tell you, honey, that I'm bad to the bone, bad to the bone, bad, 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 woo, bad to the bone.
The Flagler College Baseball Saints first took the field in 1975. And to quote former dating game host Jim Lang, here they are. The team resembled a bad softball team with uniforms to match. But this was a squad led by Coach Ron Hall and freshman pitcher Phil Wainwright, who would go on to become Flagler's first four-year player. Missing from the team photo was this man, Barry Craig, who also played some basketball for Flagler. He remembers that those early teams weren't that talented, but they sure had a lot of fun.
The coach was always in the school van. We followed in the station wagon, loaded down with about 5 cases of beer. Probably our favorite trip was when we left at 10 at night, going to Miami, and arrived about 10 minutes before game time at 10 the next morning.
I missed that whole trip. I do remember going there, but I don't remember leaving.
6 cases of beer, 10 pizzas, stopped in Vero to puke a little bit, and then the trip continued. I remember coach was upset because one of our best players was throwing up in right field during the game. Stomach virus of some type.
The 1976 team featured some new faces, including a new coach, the great Darwin White, who is still with Flagler College as of the making of this movie. Back again was Phil Wainwright, and joining him was a kid from Massachusetts named Russ Brule. Russ would go on to become the second Flagler player in history to enjoy a 4-year playing career. Despite Russ, Phil, and Darwin White, the 76 Saints failed to improve much, finishing with a 6-25 record. Coach White even conceded that one of the games was forfeited because Flagler had only 8 players. The guy who was supposed to be the 9th player was, of all places, in jail. Needless to say, the only direction the baseball program could go was up. The 1977 version of the Flagler Saints had more facial hair than a box of Smith Brothers cough drops. And that year, Flagler added some talent. Back for another year were Phil Wainwright and Russ Brule, and bursting onto the Flagler scene were 2 players soon to become Flagler College legends, pitcher Eric Cook and the great Sam Parker. Eric was from Salem, New Hampshire, where he was a high school legend, a dominating pitcher with great control and a couple of no-hitters. I say he was a legend because I know. I watched him pitch while sitting on the bench as a young sophomore at Salem High School. Sammy Parker was simply one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet. He was one of the first in a long line of lovable characters to put on the Cardinal and Gold uniforms of Flagler College. He brought a big bat and a strong arm to the Flagler lineup. In fact, he still holds a record for best ERA in a single season, a remarkable 1.78. Unfortunately, in Sam's first year, the baseball program was still floundering.
My first year, we had tryouts at the softball field because we had no field to play on. Me and we had Phil Wainwright. We played our home games at the high school. It was 305 to deep center. But Big E, and we took care of them.
The 1977 team was overshadowed by Flagler's men's tennis team, which only managed to win the national championship that year. Meanwhile, the baseball team finished with a record of 6-34, an even worse record than the previous year. It seemed as though a winning tradition was a million miles away. But in 1978, with the addition of a new coach and some talented freshmen, it wouldn't be long before Flagler College baseball was no longer a laughing matter. Pete Peaver arrived at Flagler College the same year I did, September of 1977. And from that day forward, we spent just about every day of our college careers together. He was probably the most popular, well-liked athlete in the 4 years I was at school, and most likely one of the most popular ever. It seemed like Pete was always smiling, even when he was giving you the finger. Pete had an immediate impact on Flagler baseball and was one of the best athletes to ever wear the Cardinal and Gold. He could do everything: golf, play basketball, football. He did it all, seemingly with no effort. We arrived at school just as the disco craze took over America. And wouldn't you know it, Pete could even dance. The other new players from 1978 included a wide assortment of characters, making this one of the most unique and diverse teams I've ever been affiliated with. One of the other freshmen that year was the biggest and strongest man that ever played baseball at Flagler. He was also the wittiest man I ever met. His name was Mike Shillaber. The other characters of the 78 team included my roommate, Bob Kunta Conti, also known as Arthur Fonzarelli Jr. Freshman Keith Miller and sophomore Micah Kluke were also on the team, but just for 1 year. Keith was kind of an odd guy, pictured here visiting me at my parents' house in New Hampshire, after which he disappeared, presumably to head south and try out for a part on Hee Haw. And then, of course, there's the inimitable Jerry Finnegan, who at 20 years of age looked roughly 47. Jerry was short on talent, but a great guy and a real pisser. That guy in the background is Terry Date, a part-time player at Flagler who was a certifiable lunatic, who once ate a spider in the dugout. Enough about Terry. The fall practice session ended before Thanksgiving, and then with the spring semester, Flagler baseball got its most significant addition ever, assistant coach Glenn Aspinwall. Though technically the assistant coach, Aspinwall took the reins from day one of spring practices, while Darwin White took a much lesser role. And for the first time ever, Flagler had its very own field, inaugurated on opening day, a ceremony complete with cheerleaders. Veteran Phil Wainwright was completing his 4-year stint, hoping to turn the page in his final semester. Unfortunately, the early part of the 78 season saw Flagler losing most of its games, despite having its own field. This photo pretty much indicates just how bad we were, with Jerry Finnegan suffering from the shakes at second base, Russ Uzo Brule in left field, and none other than yours truly at shortstop. Then, with our record at a dismal 2-17, something happened. The Flagler College Baseball team started winning. First, a 4-game winning streak with P.T. Wainwright pitching like never before. We ended the season winning 8 of 9 for a somewhat respectable 10-18 record, by far the best in Flagler history. But with Coach Aspinwall officially taking the head coaching job in 1979, the program was looking up. And when it came to recruiting, Coach Aspinwall knew precisely where to look. In 1979, with the addition of these 3 guys, for the Flagler College baseball team, it was time to rock and roll. With the addition of Kevin Brown, Willie Wilson, and Randy Ellis, the 1979 version of the Flagler Saints was dramatically improved. Kevin Brown was an in-your-face sort of guy who could play all of the infield positions. He was a line drive hitter with occasional power and an overall great competitor. He was the type of player you hated playing against, but you loved having on your team. Willie Wilson came to Flagler as a junior college transfer, originally from Pittsburgh. Willie was a perfect leadoff hitter, a speedy lefty who could bunt and always made contact. With his speed and great fielding skills, he was our center fielder from day one of practice. And Randy Ellis was our ace on the mound. Randy was simply the best pitcher the Flagler program had ever seen, and the best I ever played with. Some of his records still stand to this day. He was sneaky fast with great control and more pitches than an international horseshoe tournament. And he was a clutch performer, pitching almost all of the big games. With the addition of those 3 players, the 79 Saints were poised for their first winning season. The team's other new additions included freshman pitcher Bart Vig, who became known for something other than baseball. Let's just say his nickname was the Human Tripod. Another key addition was a skinny kid from Pittsburgh, a great guy whose contributions to the team would be far more significant in his later years. His name was Joe Zajavic, and in case you're wondering, yes, Zajavic would be a kick-ass hand in a game of Scrabble. Joe Z was a pitcher with decent stuff. When I first met him, he reminded me a lot of cartoon character Clyde Crash Cup. After his freshman year, Joe adopted a submarine delivery with a virtually unhittable curve that actually rose as it approached the home plate. That pitch earned the nickname the Frisbee. Brian Washburn was another freshman addition. A great guy and a decent left fielder, he was more well known for his musical talents and his gymnastic moves. And of course the fly ball that he tried to catch with his face, breaking his nose and forcing Mike Shilaba to play left field. The 79 Saints also featured some key veterans returning for another year. Me and Pete were in our sophomore year. Pitcher DH Eric Cook was back with a bigger wad of tobacco than ever. Russ Brule was our captain, finishing his 4-year career at Flagler. And in the center of things once again was Big Mike Shilaba, who continued to keep us in stitches during every practice and every van ride to a game. Mike made an impression on everyone he met. In fact, he was the first person many of the new players met upon arriving at Flagler.
Anyway, the very first person I met down at Flagler was when I was registering was Mike Shilaba. And I was just kind of looking around, not knowing anybody, and the first guy that Aspinwall introduces me to is a 6'2", 265, 70 pound nose guard looking guy.
Flagler College, yeah. Well, everything I know about Flagler, all my memories have to do with baseball, I would say. Freshman year, I come in, wide-eyed, 17-year-old. Who would I run into on the baseball field but Russ Brule, Mike Shilaba, Jerry Finnegan, Dale Lynch, Ellis, Kevin Brown. I mean, the characters were just unbelievable. Bob Conti.
To give you an idea, I mean, there's so many stories that I could tell you about Mike and how funny he is, but the one that comes to mind that gives a great example of just how witty he was, we were playing a game called Quarters, where you bounce the quarter on the table and try to get it into a cup of beer and make somebody else drink. Well, we're playing with Matt Kozak, and Matt smacks the quarter against the table, and it goes into, like, the other room. And Shilaba, without even hesitation, turns to Kozak and says, "Break out the slide rule, Galileo." And that's pretty much how witty Mike Shilaba was.
Thanks.
The team started off strong with Randy Ellis pitching a shutout in the opener. And it was all downhill from there as Flagler piled up win after win. At one point, we got on a winning streak that we thought would never end. 7, then 10 in a row, and beyond. When it was over, the streak was at 18. And finally, the Flagler baseball team had something to smile about. It finally ended when we lost a tough game to nationally ranked Division II opponent Valdosta State. But we played everyone tough that year, finishing the season with a record of 21 wins and 12 losses, by far the best in Flagler history. The Big Three had played a huge role in our success, and they started another tradition that year, the Late Show. More on that later. With all three returning for the senior year, the Flagler baseball program was looking good. We narrowly missed our bid for postseason play, and that would be our mission for the following year. And so, as we ended our season, the first winning team in Flagler baseball history had its challenge. A challenge to get even better, to make that knock on the door of postseason even louder. And that's just what happened. We did get better, and our knocking on the door of postseason play did get louder. And the main reason for Flagler's improvement as it entered the 1980s can be summed up in 2 words: Johnny Mac. Within 5 minutes of his arrival at Flagler, Johnny Mack established himself as the best player to ever step foot on Flagler Field. He was a catcher, a great catcher, with a strong arm and a quick release, and he was tougher than nails. I had the pleasure of standing on the on-deck circle to watch him hit for 2 years, and from a strictly technical standpoint, Johnny Mack could hit the shit out of the ball. And though he was a born leader and would assume the role of the team captain in his senior year, when he arrived at Flagler, he was just looking to be accepted as one of the guys. And it didn't take him long to realize just how special our team was.
Flagler College, and Flagler College Baseball in particular, was an outstanding place to play. I have met through the years so many great guys in those couple years I was there that have really become lifelong friends. Unfortunately, my job, careers, and my choices in life have taken me to parts of the country where a lot of the guys don't reside, which is unfortunate. But what's neat about the kind of friendships that grew from that period in my life were you can call these guys or meet up with them, come to a reunion, and you can pick up just like yesterday. And that speaks a lot for the brotherhood of guys that came together during that era of Flagler baseball. So many things. It was just really a brotherhood. Whether you were in class, in the library, whether you were at George's or Dan Jan's, road trips, there was always guys there. Always people you could depend on. One story that kind of illustrates that a little bit is we were playing a weekend series or a weekend game up at Armstrong State up in Savannah. And we had, I think Paul Erickson, I think he was a freshman at the time, maybe a sophomore, but he was pitching for us. And Armstrong State, perennially had a pretty good club. And we beat them that day, and Paul pitched an outstanding ball game. Well, sometime in the later portion of the ball game, we're up 2-1 or 3-0 or something of that nature. It was a close ball game. Well, Armstrong State had a cocky player. He was either the shortstop or third baseman, I'm not sure which. Well, late in the game, Paul's pitching a masterful job, doing a masterful job on the mound, and pitch got away from him and hit him in the back. Well, this cocky fella, he throws his bat down, and he starts taking a few steps toward the pitcher. And of course, I came out of the crouch. I said, now where are you going? He said, that guy hit me. I said, I know he hit you. He didn't do it on purpose. He said, well, he's going to pay. And I said, well, go ahead. I said, chances are you're not going to get by me, but if you do, look on out there. Well, he peeked up, and old Freddie came over from first base. He's about 4 steps away from Paul, and just looking at him like, well, come on. Well, of course, he never did. But it just illustrates the brotherhood, that whether you're fighting, whether you're playing, whether you're in class, wherever you were, there was a brotherhood of players.
And whereas past Flagler teams had an interesting and diverse mix of personalities, the 1980 version was nothing short of a Neil Simon play with more characters than the best novelist could ever imagine. The veterans were back and thirsty for more, including Willie Wilson, Pete Peaver, and Kevin Brown. Joe Z and Randy Ellis were back, with Joe Z's hair taking up more room than Mike Shillaber's retired jersey. And I was entering my junior year. But those 6 veterans were in for the ride of their life, with characters like Scott Popcave and his non-stop stand-up comedy routine at practice. Lee Wayne Bryan gave the team instant appeal with our female fans, with his good looks and playboy image. Tommy Rodish was Johnny Mack's roommate, a stocky athlete with a great arm, a competitive spirit, and a quick bat that unleashed some vicious home runs, as Jacksonville University would soon find out. He wore number 25, and, if I do say so myself, had a pretty nice ass. 1980 also saw the introduction of one of my best friends in the whole world, and the sweetest guy you'll ever meet, the incomparable Frank Conoscenti. Frank was a great outfielder and a solid 300-plus hitter who would become our regular left fielder during 1980 and 1981. But his often repeated phrase, uttered usually during a drunken stupor, would become the credo of the entire Flagler baseball program. More on that later. And then, of course, there's Kenny Russell, who can best be described in one word. Mark Horsen, with his flaring nostrils and tireless work ethic, was another freshman poised to make his mark at Flagler, 1980. The quiet man, Kirk Kruder, came to Flagler from Connecticut. Despite his soft-spoken manner, Kirk carried a big stick. And, during a competition with other outfielders, he once threw a ball over the center field fence while standing at home plate. Kirk was so quiet I thought he was mute, until that fateful night when he celebrated his 18th birthday by trying to drink 18 shots at the St. George's Tavern while I was tending bar. His 21st birthday, he did 21 shots. And I vividly remember that Kurt, after about maybe 12 shots or so, his head was hung. And what would happen is every maybe 30 seconds or so, he would come to and do something like this. It was good. It was like he was speaking in tongues. And it was very out of character for a guy that otherwise was very soft-spoken. And then there was our new lefty ace, one of the most colorful characters to ever play at Flagler, a future 4-year ball player at the college, and a man who became known for his utterance of these words.
Where's Herbie?
Artie Eld was a classic in every sense of the word. A great pitcher with the best pickoff move this side of Andy Pettit, and an absolute pisser, as we shall see later. But Artie wasn't the only one keeping us laughing at practice. A blonde-haired catcher from Pete Peever's hometown was about to burst onto the Flagler scene and unveil his non-stop comedy routine, including a daily recital of the dinner menu.
Dirty peas, macaroni and cheese, sliced steak, with raisins, rice, and lime.
Mike McGurk was not only a non-stop laugh riot, but a strong left-handed hitter with great power. He was a great catcher, too, one of the best to ever play at Flagler. And after his 6th beer each night, he would proudly proclaim, "Look, Ma, no hands." Fred Rakita was a freshman who came to us from Connecticut and became known as Iron Mike for his ability to throw 500 consecutive, perfectly grooved batting practice fastballs. Freddie was just another one of the great guys to join the 1980 Flagler Saints baseball team. And last but not least, this horror show rolled into town. We never guessed it at the time, but Matt Kozak would go on to become a Flagler College baseball legend, and just one more personality in this incredible mix of great people that comprised our team. And truth be told, Matt, despite his tardiness and his farting, was a good ball player, and to this day a dear friend. And whenever we'd hear a joke we didn't quite get, we'd turn to each other and say, "What?" And that was the 1980 squad, a team that would become as close as any I ever played on, and a team with more personalities than you could possibly imagine.
Blow your face out!
1980 was the birth of The Late Show, a late night party, usually at Randy and Brownie and Willie's house. Just one more thing this team always did together.
They're dancing on the ceiling, they're dancing on the floor. People everywhere coming through the door. They know there's a party going on, doing the dance and romance all night long. I know it's cold outside. Come on, baby, I'll keep you satisfied.
But The Late Show is an entirely different story. We started the year with a full fall schedule, and every practice was a laugh riot, with the addition of guys like Artie Eld, Scott Popcave, Mike McGurk, and others. Practices went very well, except for those rare occasions when Kevin Brown had to bat against this thing.
And I know Fred is probably, he loves the pitching machine story. That's got to be the most useless invention in the history of man. A pitching machine, like two wheels spinning, and all of a sudden you're up there and the ball just, like a pitcher standing out there and blows it out of his mouth at you. You don't see any arm motion, and that's my story about why I couldn't hit that damn thing. But I believe we had 24 of them yellow golf ball looking baseballs, and I swung and missed at all 24.
I was standing behind home plate with the clipboard calling people in to take batting practice, and probably 50 balls came in he swung and missed at. And with each one he swung and missed, I laughed harder and harder and harder. And finally, with all the balls congregated in the batting cage, he reaches over, he picks one up, he throws it up in the air, he swings and misses, at which point I went right to the ground.
And I thought we was going to have to call an ambulance to get Fred out of there because he was dying.
We started the 1980 season with a doubleheader win and never looked back on our way to another winning season and hopefully a bid in the district tournament. Johnny Mack led the way with a little help from friends. His big bat and strong defense propelled us, and he took charge of the pitching staff, taking no prisoners.
Johnny Mack had a big impact on me. When I was screwing up out there on the mound and he came out and jumped on my case, if somebody else might have done that, I might have told him where to stick that baseball. But when Johnny Mack spoke, it was, you listened. And because you knew it came from the heart, and you knew that he wouldn't be telling you this unless he cared, number one, and because he really did. And if you needed a boot in the ass, he gave it to you. And there were times when I deserved it, and actually every time that he did boot me in the ass, I deserved it. So, so Johnny Mack, I know you're going to be watching this, and I never told you this, but you did make a big impact on my life.
1980 was a leap year, and Flagler College was scheduled to play on February 29th. A game that, in my opinion, was a turning point of the Flagler College baseball program. February 29th, 1980, was a drizzly, cold day at Flagler Field. A day when the Flagler College Baseball Saints beat Jacksonville University, also known as JU, by a score of 1-0, causing us, Flagler players, to forever change JU's name to J who? Randy Ellis was never better, baffling the JU hitters with his array of pitches. And the sports headlines the following day pretty much said it all. That win really put Flagler College on the map, propelling us to another winning season, including 2 more wins over Jacksonville. And then the waiting game, to see if our bid for postseason play would be accepted. And in one of the great injustices in its short history, Flagler was once again denied a bid to the tournament, preventing these 3 guys from prolonging their great careers at Flagler. Despite being denied a bid for the second straight year, 1980 was a great year, and the team set a new record for wins. We were as close a bunch of guys as you'd ever meet. And as we bid farewell to Brownie, Willie, and Randy Ellis, me, Pete, Johnny Mack, and the other juniors geared up for one final bid at the district tournament. '81, the last hurrah for me, Pete, and Johnny Mack. And with our tri-captains from 1980 gone, some big shoes needed to be filled. But the returning members of our team gave us a strong nucleus. In addition to me, Pete, and Johnny Mack, Artie Eld and Joe Z were returning, giving us three things: an unhittable closer, a strong left-handed starting pitcher, and of course, more Rudolph impersonations.
Herbie didn't come to elf practice today.
What? Why not?
Because Herbie doesn't want to be an elf. He wants to be a dentist.
What? A dentist? We got dolls that walk, talk, cry, and piss their pants. And now a doll with teeth.
You don't know how stupid I feel doing this into this camera, Fred.
Back two was a strong outfield with depth: Frank Conoscenti, Matt Kozak, Freddie Rakita, Kirk Kruder, and Tommy Rodish. And in 1981, Coach Aspinwall once again proved he could recruit the right players. For 1981 would turn out to be not only our best team to date, but our biggest as well. No less than 4 of our new pitchers were 6'3" or better, including Paul Erickson, Tom McDaniel, Jim Brunig, and Little Abner lookalike Eddie Green. Chuck Shaw came in as a highly recruited freshman infielder, and challenging Artie Eld for honors as a best impersonator, he did his rendition of Molly Hatchet's lead singer.
There's one more mountain.
In fact, everyone seemed to be into the impersonation mode this year, with Frank Conoscenti doing his best Randy Macho Man Savage impersonation.
I am Macho Man, yeah. I am ready to give Hulk Hogan the beating of his life, yeah. He isn't gonna get away with what he did to Elizabeth, yeah. He says he's my friend, but he does, yeah.
Other newcomers included the man with a tongue that looked like a boa constrictor, catcher Joe Shaker. Then there was infielder Chuck Morton and outfielder Jim Huber, whose claim to fame was his breath was so atrocious he could extract confessions from war criminals by simply breathing on them. And the biggest additions to the team included shortstop Bobby Vinciguerra, probably the most talented and physically gifted player on the team, with tremendous strength, a quick bat, speed, and an incredibly strong arm. Bobby V was also a basketball player, and when he was through with basketball, he joined the Flagler baseball team in mid-season. His addition to the lineup made us stronger than ever. In the history of the Flagler baseball program, there might have been a stronger 3, 4, 5 hitters than McMahon, Ford, and Vinciguerra, but you'd have a hard time convincing me. Unfortunately for our team and Bobby V, an injury cut his season short. Freshman Joe Bernier stepped into the role of ace on the pitching staff. He was an impressive right-hander with great talent and a knack to pitch his best in big games. And then there was a guy who would go on to be Flagler MVP in 1982. A guy who had everything: speed, a great stick, and as fiery a competitor as you'd ever want to meet. His name was Chuck Walker, and you'd never know what a fierce competitor he was when you first met him, since he was just a mellow, easygoing guy who, in his own words, was Chuck Walker, and he ain't worried about it. And like the teams in 1979 and 1980, this team would be a brotherhood, a team as close as any group of people you'd ever meet. This was my senior year, and first semester I shared an apartment with Mike McGurk, the neatest guy I ever met. In fact, every Sunday morning, with me lying in bed nursing a hangover, Mike would get up and vacuum, smacking the vacuum cleaner into my door, causing me to say,
"Please go away, let me sleep for the love of God!"
One of the characters from the fall semester on the baseball team never made it to the spring. It was a cocky, foul-mouthed pitcher named Eddie Stone from South Boston, Mass. Unfortunately, we don't even have a photograph of Eddie. Fortunately, I was able to get this footage of when Eddie was a young boy.
Blow by him high, blow by him low. Goddamn yams.
And as the spring semester started, a young assistant coach joined the team. His name was Dave Barnett. I think you'll hear a little bit more about him later. The legendary Pete Peaver was captain, giving him a daily opportunity to give his famous instruction.
Let's start out by stretching your left leg.
And every night I was out with Frank Conoscenti. At some point during the night, he would blurt out the words that would become the credo of the entire Flagler College baseball program. I love you guys. The team gelled from opening day, and our date with destiny proceeded with lightning speed. With Johnny Mack once again tearing up opposing pitchers, and our pitching staff holding opponents at bay, the 1981 Flagler College Saints once again built a winning record. But winning was not our only goal. Having established new records for wins in consecutive years, and having seen Kevin Brown, Randy Ellis, and Willie Wilson be denied a chance at postseason play, the 1981 Saints were on a mission. Nothing short of postseason would be acceptable, and this team proved to be up to every challenge. By this point in our history, we weren't just beating our opponents, we were pissing on them. And as our successful regular season proceeded at full speed, we came face to face with our annual visit to Tallahassee to play the Florida State Seminoles, and the most unlikely victory in Flagler College baseball history. There are probably thousands of stories we could tell about the Florida State University game. The biggest win that I was ever involved in, and I'm sure I speak for everybody on that. The best story that I heard was told to me by Joe Zajavic in the year 2000. I think we were at the alumni weekend, and he told a story which I wish he was here to tell, but I'll do my best to repeat it. The last out of the game, the bases were loaded, and they had their leadoff batter up, and he was a pesky hitter, and he had about a 17-pitch at bat. He just kept fouling balls off, fouling them off. He worked a 3-2 count. It was a textbook ending of the game. And Joe was telling me the story about how Johnny Mack kept giving them the sign for the fastball, which for Joe was some kind of breaking ball. I mean, it wasn't the Frisbee, but it was a breaking ball. His fastball broke all over the place. But Johnny Mack was giving signals, and he kept giving one, time and time again, he was giving fastball, fastball, fastball. And Joe said, I wasn't about to shake Johnny Mack off, which is pretty much par for the course with all the pitchers. But then he said, at some point, he said, I wanted to throw the curve because I knew I'd get the guy out. And Joe said he peered in after 17 pitches. He peered in, and Johnny Mack gave him this signal. He peered in for the signal, and Johnny Mack gave it one of these. In other words, Frisbee, game over. And that's just what happened. Joe threw the Frisbee. It was out of the strike zone, but after seeing all those fastballs, his wild rising curve, the kid took a weak swing at it and hit a lazy fly ball to right field. And the next thing you know, Flagler College 4, Florida State University 3. It still tickles me to death to say those words. The story that I tell about that game, it was the same thing. The last out, I have my own story. Of course, the guy hit that lazy fly ball out to right field. Freddie Rakita was playing right field in that game, and he had dropped the fly ball earlier in the game. And when the guy hit that fly ball over my head to right field, I distinctly, and to my dying day, I'll remember turning and sprinting as fast as I could out to right field, screaming at the top of my lungs, "Catch that fucking ball!" And needless to say, he caught it, and I joined the celebration at the pitcher's mound as if we had won the World Series. And truth be told, what we did against the 9th-ranked team in the country, Division I, was probably akin to winning the World Series. When I read the newspapers the next day, I just smiled. And no less than 50 people came up to me the following day to get the happy recap. And a little later in the year, to prove this game was no fluke, we beat Division II national champ Valdosta State on their field under the lights on a home run by, well, I'll let Kirk Kruder describe it.
And then Valdosta State, a nice night game, close game, watching Fred bat. All of a sudden, he goes out there, most aggressive thing I've ever saw. Took a pitch, attacked it, 10 feet off the air, straight over left center field fence. I'm thinking to myself, damn. I'm like, you know, as a baseball fan, that's beautiful. Then I get up to the plate and I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to top that? So in typical fashion, I walked. What else you gonna do? The guy was not gonna throw anything near the plate anyway after being a victim of that.
The season ended with the team equaling its 26 win total from 1980. A major feat when you consider we beat Florida State, Valdosta State, and every District 25 opponent we came across. A day or so after graduation, we gathered as a team, as always, at Josie's place out at St. Augustine Shores, and waited the call from Coach Aspinwall regarding our fate in the district tournament. Would we qualify for the district tournament? What's it gonna be, boy? Yes or no?
Stop right there! I gotta know right now!
The answer, of course, was yes. The 1981 Flagler College Baseball Saints made history as the first team to qualify for postseason. Unfortunately, we lost 2 gut-wrenching one-run games, and on the final out of the second loss, in May of 1981, my college baseball career came to an end, prompting me to ask myself, what the fuck am I gonna do now? The story has a happy ending, though, as Flagler has gone on from 1981 to enjoy winning seasons in most of the next 20 years. I'm proud to have been part of those early days, and though I graduated and left St. Augustine, I still call myself a Flagler College baseball saint. The camaraderie and love has continued since graduation, in large part during alumni weekends, where traditions like busting Frank Conoscenti's balls continues as if we never left St. Augustine.
Just want to say this is everything, and it's only 4 hours in. This is everything I've ever wanted in the past 5 years. It's great seeing my buddies again. I love Fred Ford.
Could you do me a favor?
Yes, sir.
Could you get the phone?
And with each year, the memories get more special. The stories about our glory days, what it means to be a former Flagler baseball player, seem more alive and important than ever.
We couldn't have this stadium without all the former Saints, all their hard work and efforts when we had nothing.
I'll never forget, we're playing Eastern Kentucky. We're up like 10-1. It's the third inning, bases loaded, 2 outs. Johnny Mac's up, Artie's sitting next to me. He goes, "Hey, Johnny, come on, get that insurance run in." We ended up winning 10-9. I came in the last inning with the bases loaded and got the save.
Geez, I have no idea.
Every guy on that team was a character in one way or another. I think even Kirk Kruder was a character. I believe he was a character of some sort. I'm not sure if I can remember correctly. I don't remember him ever saying anything. But I'm sure if he would have said something, he would have been a character also.
And then, of course, there was McGurk. No. Snatch cookies.
My 20th birthday, when I'm sitting in St. George's Tavern, and I had no idea what was going to happen. I wound up drinking about 20 shots that night, ending with 151, and Mike Shillaber, who was the most intimidating individual I've ever met in my life, dragged me out of the bar along with Fred Ford, put me in my chartreuse yellow Pinto, and took me to my apartment where I immediately fell out of the car, where Mike Shillaber picks me over his shoulder like a piece of meat, takes me upstairs and throws me on my bed, and where I stayed for 3 days.
My God, I
You know, we were talking about the going to a small school, and it was pretty much what I was talking to my daughter about the other night, about the relationships and the friendships that you get at a small school, and you're not going to get that at the Florida States, the Floridas.
They're doing the introductions, and the announcer announces Tom Wodish. I'll never forget that. We died.
I got 2 words to say. Go home! Go home!
Why am I such a misfit? I am not just a miswit. You can't fire me. I quit. Why don't I fit in?
It is such a mesh.
Flagler College. What can I say about my Flagler experience? Met my wife, met my best friend, met a bunch of other guys, friends I keep in touch with. Best 3 years of my life.
I got 4 words to say. Run, Forrest, run!
Nobody likes a Charlie in the bar.
Alumni Weekend 2000. Too long between visits.
Fucking A.
Let's hope we all get some snacks from the Irish trash can.
The amount of
I love you guys.
Or a boat. They can't step up a boat.
and from there it's just fucking.
Just want to say that it's great to see all you guys again. There were some special times we had back at Flagler, and all the guys are going to get this video. I want to tell you guys that I love all you guys. Like Frank would say, I love you guys. And as Brits would say, 10, 12, and 100.
I always refer to my friends at Flagler College as being not only my teammates, but my brothers.
I'm looking for the man who shot my.
But overall, man, I wouldn't trade anything from Flagler.
You never know when you come into a new situation and an established group of guys. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter if you were the 30th guy on the bench or in the starting lineup. If you were on the team, you were a brother.
A couple of years, maybe several years after I graduated Flagler, a friend of mine from New Hampshire asked me, do you think if you went to a big university, you might have had a chance to play professional baseball? And I remember my answer was very definitive in my mind. I said, first of all, if I had played professional baseball, I probably never would have met my wife, and that's probably the most significant and important thing that's happened to me since graduating. But secondly, I wouldn't trade my experience at Flagler College and Flagler College Baseball for anything in the world. For Alumni Weekend in the year 2000, current Flagler coach and former assistant coach Dave Barnett organized a special ceremony to honor the players of the decade for the 1970s and 1980s. The ceremony was held at the incredible new Flagler Baseball Complex. Dave Barnett.
Some of my most vivid memories of Flagler College are when I came here as a student back in 1980 and asked Coach Glenn Aspinwall if I could help out with a baseball program. After, I guess, maybe 20 or 30 games into the spring, the umpiring was really bad, I felt. I don't know where Glenn got the umpires from, but we had been kind of hosed at home, as they say, by the umpires, and I noticed the guy behind the plate was given balls on his right hand and strikes on his left. So I made a comment to the base umpire that I guess he really didn't like, and he proceeded to eject me from the game. The athletic director at the time was Ernie Lantford, so I thought I'll probably be kicked out of Flagler for getting ejected when the head coach never even made a comment. But that was my first experience as a coach here. And I guess it ended up being a positive one in the administration's eyes, because I guess about 12 years later they hired me as the coach here, and I've been here ever since. But it's been a great ride. I certainly appreciate what the college administration has done with our baseball program. Our alumni are responsible for our $500,000 stadium. It's beautiful. We've had some great teams. We've had about 12 players drafted. Just what else can I say? We've just had, there's so many memories that I can't even begin to talk about one specific one. But I just would like to say thank you to all the players that played for Coach Aswall and all the players that played for me for all these years. You guys are what makes Flagler baseball truly the greatest baseball in the country. Thank you.
No, thank you, Dave, for the outstanding job you've done and continue to do with the Flagler baseball program. I know I speak for all former alumni players when I tell you we're proud of you and we love you. Keep up the good work. The year 2000 Alumni Weekend ceremony brought out a large contingent of baseball players, but that's par for the course, as Tommy Rodish explains.
I just need to get this off my chest, man. I was in the bathroom peeing.
Wait a sec. Did he just say peeing? Let's run that back.
I just need to get this off my chest, man. I was in the bathroom peeing.
Yeah, I guess he did say peeing. Anyway, Tommy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
And it dawned on me that there ain't a sport at Flagler College outside of baseball that can draw the group. Go ahead and pan over here to these guys. Okay, pan over here to these guys. All right, there's not a sport at the college that has representation at every alumni function here than baseball. I need somebody to explain that to me. We get these guys every single year, and somebody started a tradition somewhere. Might have been Glenn, might have been Dave. We have the representation. A soccer player spent his afternoon today watching us make fools of ourselves on a baseball field. Okay, he has no soccer buddies here that he wants to hang with.
Those fucking baseball players were real wimps. We soccer players, we ran our ass off at practice. What those homo baseball players do? They stood around the field, rubbing their balls and scratching their asses.
He wants to hang with these people. That's all I want to get on this film, and I hope that it works somehow, Fred, when you edit it. But baseball this is the family of baseball players. Those guys are 6, 7, 8 years old. We done? The 6, 7, 8 years behind us, and they're here, and we're here. And there ain't another sport in this college that has a representation or the love that we all have for each other. They can't do this. And I just wanted that to be said. Appreciate it.
And so, nearly 20 years after graduating, it was time to take our bow. And for one day, we were heroes once again.
Just for one day, we can be heroes. Just for one day, and you can be me, and I'll drink all the time. 'Cause we're lovers, and that is a fact. Yes, we're lovers, that is that.
nothing will keep us together. We can beat them forever and ever. Oh, we can be heroes just for one day.
In just a minute, we'll watch the happy recap of this movie. But first, I'd like you to watch a music video I put together about our days at Flagler College and subsequent times we've had at Alumni Weekend. I gave it a lot of thought on what song should be used for this music video, and after all was said and done, I think the appropriate song to celebrate the years at Flagler and all those subsequent Alumni Weekends is this one.
Once upon a time there was a tavern where we used to raise a glass or two. Remember how we laughed away the hours? Think of all the great things we would do. Those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever and a day. We'd live the life we'd choose. We'd fight and never lose, for we were young and sure to have our way. Then the busy years went rushing by us. We lost our starry notions on the way. If by chance I'd see you in the tavern, we'd smile at one another and we'd say, those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever and a day. We'd live the life we choose. We'd fight and never lose. Those were the days, oh yes, those were the days. La la da 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 Through the door there came familiar laughter. I saw your face and heard you call my name. Oh, my friend, we're older but no wiser, for in our hearts the dreams are still the same. Those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever and a day. We'd live the life we choose. We'd fight and never lose. Those were the days, oh yes, those were the days. La 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 la
When I arrived in Flagler College in 1977, I had one brother. When I left 4 years later, I had about 35. And that list grows. The list of young men who come to St. Augustine as college freshmen and join the fraternity of brothers known as Flagler College Baseball players. I have only 2 regrets about my college career. Number 1, St. Augustine was too far away from New Hampshire, thereby preventing my parents from seeing me play a college baseball game. Number 2, well, it was over too damn fast. The years I spent at Flagler were years I cherished for a lifetime, years that helped shape me into the person I am today. In my wildest dreams, I never could have anticipated the fun I would have, the great friends I would make, and the memorable games I'd be involved in. To try to put into perspective what it's like to be a Flagler College baseball player, to have experienced the camaraderie and intimacy of college sports at a small college, well, you need only ask yourself one question. What do you suppose the Florida State University baseball players from the 1970s are doing for alumni weekend? I can never give back enough to show my appreciation for all I experienced as a Flagler College baseball player. I only hope this movie gives some tribute to the men of those early days of the program. It was my privilege to be affiliated with people like Darwin White, who was as big a part of Flagler College history as any man alive. During my visit in the year 2000, I proposed a toast, as opposed to a hymn, for Glenn Aspinwall. It hardly seemed enough for the man that turned Flagler baseball program around and started a winning tradition. The players stayed close through thick and thin, most of us graduating, some finding their wives along the way, and some actually doing both. Since graduation, we've attended each other's weddings and relived those glory days whenever we get together. As always, there was a sense of brotherhood, a sense of togetherness, which we lived every second we were at school. And as we enter the 21st century, Mark and Carrie Corzen's daughter, Shauna, is attending Flagler. A whole new generation linked to the baseball fraternity. We even have our first grandfather. I must have been born under a lucky star to have the good fortune of being at Flagler during the time its winning tradition was born, fighting the battles with the legendary Johnny Mack, and playing side by side with Pete Peaver for 4 of the greatest years of my life. When we took the field, we were all business, a competitive team from top to bottom. And when the game was over, we had more fun than I ever could have imagined. For this was our field of dreams, and these are the men that are truly my heroes. And from my perspective, that's the way it was all those years ago when we were Saints. Oh, and one other thing. I love you guys.